The wind carried a sound that night, a sound that wasn't quite a cry, but not silence either. It was soft, trembling, like the echo of a heart breaking. In the dim glow of the moon, a mare named Lyra stood over the frozen grass, her breath rising in small clouds. Her body shook with exhaustion and pain, and beside her, in the cold cradle of the meadow, lay 7 newborn foals. All 7 were alive. Barely. Lyra knew this wasn't supposed to happen. Horses never gave birth to more than one. But the curse that lived in her blood made the impossible real, and cruelly so. She nudged each foal with her nose, counting them again and again, as if the number might change. Her legs trembled beneath her, and the frost beneath her hooves glimmered like shards of glass. The herd watched from a distance, silent, uneasy. Even the stallion, Astor, the one who had once loved her most, did not step forward. He looked away when her eyes met his. Lyra understood why. They all knew what these births meant. The old legend spoke of the 7 foals of the dusk mare, creatures born from both blessing and ruin. It was said that when they came into the world, one would bring light, one would bring darkness, and the others would decide the fate between them. But the legend never said what would happen to their mother. Lyra's body grew weaker with each breath. She collapsed to her knees, whispering to the tiny, trembling lives before her, "Live, no matter what happens, live." Then she closed her eyes, and the wind swallowed her final breath. The herd dispersed by dawn, leaving the 7 foals alone in the mist. But fate had other plans. A few hours later, a young shepherd named Elian found them. He was barely 16, a quiet boy with rough hands and a heart too big for his small life. He'd lost his mother 2 winters ago and his father had grown bitter since. When Elian saw the foals lying in a patch of frost, he felt something stir in him, something protective, almost sacred. He gathered them in his wool cloak, though he knew it was foolish. He carried them back to the old barn near his home, fed them milk by hand, and sang the same lullabies his mother once sang to him. He gave each foal a name. Soul, for the golden one who always sought the light. Nyra, for the dark one whose eyes glowed blue like stars. Rowan, the restless one. Ash, who limped but never stopped trying. Keen, who was always watchful. Mira, gentle and shy. And finally, Vale, the smallest, silent, almost too weak to stand. Days turned into weeks. Against all odds, they grew. But Elian began to notice something strange. Each foal had a gift. Soul could warm the air around her with a breath. Nyra could make shadows flicker and move like living things. Rowan could run faster than any wind. Ash healed from wounds within moments. Keen could sense danger before it came. Mira could calm others simply by standing near them. And Vale could do something none of the others could. When she looked at someone, she saw what they hid from the world. At first, Elian thought these were miracles. But as the years passed, the line between miracle and curse began to blur. The villagers began to whisper about the strange shepherd and his unnatural herd. One evening, when lightning struck the forest and left a tree burning for 3 days, people said it was the foal's fault. When a child fell sick and raved about dark horses in her dreams, they said it was the foal's doing. Elian tried to keep them safe. He hid them deep in the woods, away from prying eyes. But the world has a way of finding what it fears. One night, men came with torches. They shouted, called him a witch's son, a bringer of ill omen. They wanted the foals. Elian stood in front of the barn door, heart pounding. The flames painted the faces of the villagers in red and gold, and behind him, he could hear the foals stirring, their hooves shifting in fear. "Please," Elian said, his voice cracking. "They've done nothing wrong." But the leader, a man named Corin, who once worked beside Elian's father, spat at his feet. "Things like them shouldn't exist. You've cursed this valley, boy." When they pushed forward, Soul let out a cry that shook the air. Fire burst from her mane, circling her like a crown. The men screamed and stumbled back, but the terror had already rooted itself deep. From that night on, they called her the fire mare and swore she would bring ruin upon them all. Elian fled with the foals before dawn. He didn't stop running until the valley was far behind him. For years, they lived in the mountains. Elian grew into a man, and the foals into powerful, untamed creatures of light and shadow. He loved them like family, but he could feel the legend's weight pressing closer. He began to dream of a woman's voice, a whisper that said, when they are 7 years old, one will choose the world's fate. He didn't understand it, not until their 7th winter came. The snow that year was different. It fell heavy and red under the sunset. Naira, once calm and distant, began to wander at night, her eyes glowing brighter. Soul tried to stop her, but the two began to fight, fire against darkness. When they clashed, the world itself seemed to tremble. Elian watched in horror as the legend unfolded before his eyes. Naira's shadows spread through the valley below, swallowing the trees. Soul's flames burned them back. The other foals gathered, torn between them. Then Vale stepped forward, the smallest of them all. Her voice, quiet and trembling, broke through the storm. "Stop," she said. "This isn't what we were born for." But neither sister listened. The mountain cracked beneath their hooves, and a storm of light and shadow rose into the sky. Elian ran to Vale and fell to his knees. "What can I do?" he begged. Vale looked at him with tears in her silver eyes. "You already did everything you could. Now it's our turn." She stepped into the space between Soul and Naira, her mane glimmering faintly like frost in moonlight. She touched her muzzle to Soul's burning face, then to Naira's cold one. And as she did, light and darkness began to fade, not destroyed, but joined. The storm quieted. The mountain stilled. When the snow finally stopped falling, Elian found himself alone. The foals were gone. Only Vale's voice lingered, soft as wind. Not all endings are meant to be seen. Spring came early that year. Grass grew over the scorched earth, and flowers bloomed where ash had fallen. The valley people returned to find the land more fertile than ever. They said the curse had lifted. They never spoke of Elian again. But deep in the mountains, near a still pond, a herd of 7 horses sometimes appeared at dawn. They moved like mist, never leaving tracks, never aging. Travelers who saw them swore that when they looked into their eyes, they saw their own hearts, every secret, every regret, every dream they'd forgotten. Years later, a wanderer came through the valley and found an old carving in the stone near the pond. It showed a boy and 7 foals standing together beneath a storm. The carving was old, worn by rain and time, but one could still read the words etched beneath it. Not all gifts are meant to be understood. Some are meant to change what cannot be seen. And on certain nights, when the moon hung low and the air was still, those who listened closely swore they could hear the sound of hooves echoing through the mountains, 7 steady beats, and one softer, smaller step behind them, like the echo of a promise never broken.